So at this time, we have a special presentation, and Police Chief Ed Barberini will start this off. You're on, Chief.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Vice Mayor and council members. Thank you for affording us the opportunity to recognize James Haggerty this evening for his part in the PG&E investigation. I'd also like to thank tonight those members of the prosecution team that came down to support him, including DA investigator, I guess now Supervisor Rich Maher, Assistant U.S. Attorney Hallie Hoffman, Jeff Shank, and Denise Oakey, and our District Attorney Steve Wagstaff. So I'd like to thank them for their support throughout the investigation and their support this evening in recognizing James. James has been awarded, and James, if you want to come on up, James has been awarded a Police Chief's Commendation. The citation on that commendation reads, from January of 2012 through January of 2017, San Bruno Police Department Detective James Haggerty was assigned to the United States Attorney's Office, Northern District of California, as the lead investigator in the criminal investigation into PG&E, resulting from the pipeline explosion that occurred on September 9th, 2010. This explosion took the lives of 8 people, wounded dozens of others, and destroyed an entire neighborhood. Detective Haggerty worked tirelessly for over 5 years on this case, in some cases late into the night, on weekends, and holidays. He was credited as having managed and led the investigation since he joined the team, and was without question the investigator that the entire prosecution team turned to. Detective Haggerty consistently developed new areas for the prosecution. He gathered, reviewed, and analyzed countless items of evidence. Detective Haggerty identified and interviewed dozens of witnesses and reviewed literally millions of documents. While managing the investigation team, Detective Haggerty organized the other assigned agents and directed them with tasks during the investigation. Through Detective Haggerty's leadership, vision, direction, persistence, and dedication, the investigating agents were able to reduce a database of millions of documents into a usable and manageable amount for prosecution. During the investigation, Detective Haggerty single-handedly developed a felony obstruction charge that became critical to the prosecution. He was able to do this by locating a piece of evidence among millions of documents that can only be described as miraculous. Detective Haggerty's accomplishments are magnified by the fact that the data he discovered and researched was related to the transmission of natural gas through pipelines. He did not receive this assignment because he had any expertise in that area. To effectively prepare this case, Detective Haggerty educated himself in a field that he had otherwise no expertise or knowledge of. Detective Haggerty's encyclopedic mastery of the evidence, both documents and witnesses, could not have been more impressive, and his more than meticulous understanding of the evidence made him an invaluable expert in the subject matter of pipeline safety. This effort is indicative of Detective Haggerty's determination to see that justice was served and to represent the San Bruno Police Department in the strongest possible manner on behalf of the victims of this tragic event. Detective Haggerty's work with the United States Attorney resulted in a successful prosecution and 6 felony convictions for violations of federal statute. Detective Haggerty is to be commended for his dedication, persistence, and commitment to duty during the course of this investigation. Congratulations, James.
Thank you, Chief Barberini. That was great. This is the first opportunity I've had to speak publicly about this investigation, so I have a whole lot to say, but I promise to keep this brief because I know council has important business. So I'll just begin. Pipelines just don't blow up. This was a quote from one of the first research items that I came across when I was first assigned to this investigation. It resonated with me as it forced basic but fundamental questions. How did it explode? Why in San Bruno? Was this explosion isolated or something systemic? And could it have been prevented? As the investigation unfolded and some of the answers to these questions developed, I came to realize that PG&E, on its face, was bad public policy. How can a large entity serve two masters? How can this utility be beholden to shareholders and to public safety? Inevitably, these two paths conflict, and when they do, which one becomes the priority? It was these two philosophies that drove much of what I investigated. That high-power transmission pipelines do not suddenly burst after decades of service, and that profits over safety drove a culture to a tragic end. I was born and raised in San Bruno. I went to school here. I work here still. In fact, for 10 years, I lived several blocks from Segment 180. I have both a professional and personal connection to this case. This also drove my investigation. I wanted to find out the how and the why. I needed to. We needed to. This event mattered to so many of us. This was a story that needed to not only be discovered, but something that needed to be told. I've been asked many questions by so many different people over the past years about this case. Most recently, I've been asked about the trial, its outcome, and what it means going forward. Often missed is what the trial actually represented. It was our day in court. Win, lose, or draw, we were finally, as a city, going to be able to tell our story about what we discovered to the public at large. For me, this is very profound. For me, court has always been the great equalizer. Court is blind to social standing, prominence, wealth, political beliefs, and race. Court offers a chance to be heard with equal footing, big or small. That's all we really wanted. This was a case first of its kind. Never before had charges such as these been brought. This usually means court will take years, and this case was no exception. For very valid reasons, it took 6 years to get to court. However, the unintended consequence of this can be that the humanity of the event is robbed from us. Time doesn't necessarily heal all wounds, but memories are not as fresh. The event itself fades away, and people move forward with their lives. The explosion wasn't necessarily the first thing that we always thought of. And this is why I wanted to thank the San Bruno City Council, our mayor, Jim Ruane, and our city manager, Connie Jackson. You always continue to breathe life into this investigation. I cannot express how impactful this was to me and to the other investigators. Thank you. Over the past 6 years, I've had the pleasure of meeting some wonderful and very talented people who are equally deserving of praise for their selflessness. I would like to first publicly thank the firefighters, especially the San Bruno firefighters, for confronting the explosion head on. I want to thank all of the police officers, especially the San Bruno police officers, who confronted this explosion head on. You so rarely see genuine bravery, and we witnessed that night. Soon after the explosion, it was discussed what would be the most appropriate venue for this event if charges could or would be brought, state or federal court. Federal court was the appropriate choice. And although San Mateo County wouldn't see a trial, this is why I want to thank District Attorney Steve Wagstaff. Mr. Wagstaff, for 6 years, dedicated his office's resources, and most importantly, dedicated Senior Inspector Rich Maher to this investigation, even though his court, or the San Mateo County Court, wouldn't see a trial. Without your efforts and without Rich's efforts, we certainly wouldn't have seen the result that we did, so thank you. I also want to thank United States Attorney Brian Stretch for believing in this case. I want to thank the federal prosecutors who are involved in this case, especially those that are with us today, Jeff Shank, Denise Oakey, Hallie Hoffman, and Hartley West. It takes real courage to bring a case into federal court that's never been done before. There's no template that you can follow. And I just wanted to thank you for your bravery. I want to thank former police chief Neil Telford for starting this investigation. I can distinctly remember the first conversation that I had with Neil about taking over this case, and his statements to me had a profound impact. I want to thank Commander Jeff Caldwell. I don't know if many people know this, but where's Jeff? Oh, right. Jeff was the initial investigator on this case, and he was promoted and I took the case over. And I think you said it was going to be 6 or 12 months. It ended up being longer. But having Jeff as the initial investigator in this case, and then having him ultimately become my supervisor for this case, was necessary. Patience is a virtue of leadership, and had it not been for Jeff's experience and knowing how hugely complex many of these issues were, it enabled the investigation to stay patient while I learned and absorbed all that I could about crack growth promulgation and fracture mechanics and what it means to send gas through a high-power transmission line. So thank you, Jeff, for your patience. I want to thank Lieutenant Troy Fry, who's over here. Troy trained me on how to be a detective. Without all that you've done for myself in the Bureau, we wouldn't have come to the result that we did. So thank you. I want to thank Senior Inspector Rich Maher. When a detective has a question, they go to someone like Rich. Rich is a detective's detective. We had some great times over the past 6 years and some long nights. And having you as a partner, I couldn't have asked for more, so thank you. I'm sure there's people that I'm missing on this list, but I want to end by thanking the 4 most important people in my life. I want to thank my beautiful and intelligent wife, Jackie, for all your love and support, especially at the start of 2016 in the months preparing for trial and for the summer months when I was gone pretty much all the time. Without your unwavering support and love, I couldn't have done it. I want to thank my beautiful daughters, Cora, Mika, and Isla. I know that Daddy was away for a long time over the past 6 years, and I can't give you that time back, but thank you for your love. Your smiles held the day. Thank you.
Detective Haggerty, on behalf of the mayor, the council, and a grateful community, you did us right, and we're very proud of our department and what you've done, especially that we will not forget the victims up in the Crestmore, Glenview area. So thank you so much. It's invaluable. Thank you.